So the metaphor that I've used a lot, that most of you have probably already heard, is that charisms are like your chores in the family of God. Chores are freely given. You don't have to earn your chores, right? So you just show up and they're there. And it's the same with our charisms, where it's a function of the family that we are a part of. And so when we are a part of that family, there's things that you are given to do to contribute to the larger family and to be able to move forward together and really express the love that we do have for each other. So just a little bit about me personally. This slide has been around for a while, and so it talks about charism starting in high school, but really the origin story of why I care about this so much started when I was about 6 years old. I was one of those early readers that's either really fun or really not fun to teach. And so my Catholic school teachers were just like scrambling to find things for me to read. And they had a large collection of biographies of the saints that some of the older children would read. And so I was reading about St. Rose of Lima in one of the kid biographies. And I'm reading it and just weeping hysterically at my house. And my mom is like, "What did she give you to read? This is not what I expected from your Catholic school reading material." And if you know the story of St. Rose of Lima, there's a lot of sad and tragic elements. She doesn't want to get married, and because of the culture she's a part of, it's so important that she has to chop her hair, give herself a choppy haircut, and burn her face with boiling water and all these things to make herself undesirable for marriage. And I'm reading about this, and of course it's sad, and that's part of why I'm crying, but I'm really crying because I don't have anything in common with her. I don't want any of the things that she wanted other than Christ. And I'd been given a beautiful faith by my parents and my grandmother, and I knew I wanted to become a saint. But if this was the path to sainthood, it was despair, because I was just there's nothing I want more than to get married. That's what I'm going for. And I would love to do all these other things with my life that I see her so actively turning away from and rejecting. And it was very confusing at 6 years old how both things could be the case. And so as I grew up, when I was getting ready to go to college, I encountered this theology of charisms for the first time in the catechism, just Googling and trying to figure out what I was supposed to do with my life. I think I typed in Catholic, what do you do with your life? And somebody had pulled out, the section from the catechism that we're gonna look at a little bit later that talks about how important this is. But the section in the catechism is approximately this long, and that's all there is about it. And so I was okay, well, that's not everything I need. And I went hunting for more, and there was very, very little that I could find. And so over the course of the next 12 years, I kept piecing together things from different sources. But this idea grabbed me so much because it was the answer to the question I had about St. Rose of Lima when I was 6, where there was a path where she was a saint, and I could also be a saint, and we could look like we have nothing in common other than the fact that we are pursuing Christ. And that shows us in the diversity of saints. You think about your favorite saint, they're probably different. Maybe we have all different saints in this room, and then they're all so different from each other. Saints are shocking in their diversity, whereas evil people are shocking in their similarity. There's very, very few ways to be really evil. There's not any creativity in evil, and they're all the same to a certain extent. Whereas in the freedom of faith, there is the most authentic diversity that you can encounter. And our charisms show us what is our unique path to that sainthood that's going to be unique to us, that's going to be different for me than my husband, than my children, than all of the people in this room. And we can be pursuing Christ in the same way and end up with totally different life situations and things that we spend our time doing because of that diversity. And so then I pursued theology at Benedictine, and I also went to Encounter, like many of you here I know, and it was really through Encounter that the Lord made way for this ministry to come about, and I'm so thankful that I get to do this. I finally have the job that I would do for free, which that's the goal, right? Is you always want to get to the point where you have a job that you would do for free. And if somebody would feed my children, then I would absolutely do this for free. So as we start with identity, we want to start with where you see yourself today. And when we look at where identity comes from organically, there's really three places that it's arising from. One is the relationships we have with other people. And that's obviously a good thing, right? There's many relationships in this room. There's many married couples. There's so much friendship. There's your relationship that you have with your priest. These are important, good relationships. But if they edge out your relationship with God as the center of your identity, you are on ground that ultimately will not sustain you for your entire life. Because, God forbid, relationships can change and end through death temporarily. And as that occurs, we can find that we lose track of who we are because we've let that be too central to who we are. And we've witnessed this, I think, especially in this group of people, when my own youngest brother left for college. Mom kind of didn't know who she was for a little bit because she had been a wonderful mother to us. And she, of course, still is our mom, but the day-to-day, what do I do, who am I because of that, had drastically changed. And it was a much more challenging transition for her because of that. And she sought the Lord, and he brought her through it, in a way that he does, where it's even better than if you had not gone through the challenge. But ultimately, we're looking for what will always be true. And the only thing that will always be true is the relationship that we have with God, that God is our Father and we are his child. And then all of those great relationships we have, our marriages, our children, our friends, our spiritual relationships can be right up there hugging the middle. They can be right next to the most important thing we have, but they can't be it because it's going to let us down. And then we come to achievements, which this is kind of happens on both sides. The things you have achieved or the things you wanted to achieve that you haven't. And when this becomes something that says something about who you are once again on even shakier ground than those relationships. And this is what I struggled with so much. This is why the Lord brought me into Encounter when he did, is because he was like, you're gonna definitely screw it up if I let you move forward in this ministry work while you are still focused on your achievements. Because probably, 8 years ago or so, if I were to be in front of this room, I've always loved being in front of rooms of people. I have a degree in theater, and I came up in theater the best way you possibly can, where my mom was a nursing home activity director. And so from like 14 months old, I got put in a tutu and plopped in front of a bunch of, like a captive audience, literally. And they all loved me, and I just thought I was the best thing ever. And it was a really great way to build some confidence as a performer. And I had been doing things like that my whole life, but that same shift happened to me that happens to so many of us when we enter into adolescence and become a preteen, where all of a sudden we start trying to figure out what it is that people are thinking about us, and we start to think, is this impressive enough? Am I enough? And that continued all throughout high school, my 20s, etc. And so, like I said, probably 8 years ago, being in front of you, I would have been searching the crowd, seeking, like, what is it that they think about me? And I would have let that mean something about what I thought about myself. And it doesn't matter how much the crowd loves you, there's always those faces that are not saying that on their face, right? And so it's just a losing battle, where you let that mean something about yourself. Whereas now, you all are some of the most lovely people I've ever met. I care about your spiritual health very much, but also if you hate me, I don't care. It's unfortunate, but fine. And that's where we have to be to actually be free, to do what it is that he's calling us to do. And I wasn't before that, and he brought that healing and that deliverance to me through Encounter, in my identity specifically. And I'll just share briefly what that looked like, because it was such an ingrained part of me to be that way. I remember thinking so strongly, like, I don't understand how you would be a person and not be this way. This feels like just essential to like my humanity, to care what other people think. And so I went into adoration one day, and I was just kind of pouring out my heart to Jesus, and I imagined him in front of me. And as I'm talking, I realized that all this achievement everything was like this huge cape, like a cloak that I was wearing, and it's like a thick cloak. And so if you've ever used a weighted blanket, you know there's kind of a like lulling that happens with that, where you get kind of like lulled into security by the weight on you. And I realized that that's what it was, and Jesus just reached up and he just flicked the knot and it fell off. And I would love to just be like, and then I was free, but I just had a panic attack. Like I freaked out. I was just like, absolutely not, Jesus. Like, we are not doing this right now. This was hypothetical. Hypothetical is what we're doing right now. And he laughed at me, of course, and was just like, I know, but I wanted you to know that I could. And it's because you need it that we're gonna take the long way around on this. Because if I just took it right now, you would be like a newborn. That's why like newborns out of the womb have like all their flailing limbs and stuff, because they're used to being compacted by something. And you've gotta like give them the opportunity to get used to like, okay, my hand's gonna be over there now, not right here. And it's this process of integration that brings that about. And that was the same thing he was inviting me into. And he just asked me, could you come back here and practice? Could you come and pray and take it off? And it took like 6 months where I would like take it off and talk to him, and then I'd be like, and we're putting it back on. Like, it's like, go back out. And he would help me put it back on. You know, like it wasn't something where he was like, oh my gosh, this is taking a really long time. Like he was there for the process with me. And in about 6 months, at the end of a time of prayer, I was just like, I think I'm done with it. And he was like, yeah, I think you were probably like a week ago, but you got here today, and that's fine. And now, if I'm wearing it, I know in 5 seconds and can then spiritually imagine taking it off and be okay again, because it's such a clear before and after. And what it is that he has for us to actually achieve is so incredible and so grand that we're gonna think it's crazy. And if we have that limitation of needing to get other people's approval for it, we're never going to be able to embark on it. And that's why he wants to free us to be able to do the work. And then the final one is struggles. Sins that we struggle with. It might be diagnoses, it could be things that other people have done to you, it could be things that you contributed to or you had no say in at all that leads to these struggles in your life. And it can feel like that is the most true thing about you. And if you've ever had a struggle like that, you know that that's where the despair sinks in, right? Where we just think that this is all it's ever going to be, this is all I'm ever going to be. This is going to be what takes or ends my life. And it's so hard to leave space for the virtue of hope when we're in that place. And really that's why he wants to free us from this being our identity as well. Because he came and died for our heroic hope. The heroic hope that heaven is real. And that even here, he has so much for us in further intimacy with him. And so when we are able to identify these things in our life, what are the relationships? What are the achievements that I cling to? What are the struggles that I cling to? And cultivate detachment from these things. It actually means that our relationships are better. We achieve more and we struggle less because we take our eyes off of those things and just put them on Christ. And it sets everything into order. And that's what creates the foundation for us to be able to really contribute in meaningful ways. So we hear all the time that we are sons and daughters of God. This is what happens when we are baptized. We are in a post-Christian culture, as we can see if we look around. But the Christian foundations of our culture have led to this phrase that you will hear people, even people not of faith, use, the fact that all human beings are sons and daughters of God. And that's just not strictly theologically accurate. It's extremely close, but it's not right there. And the fact is that God is extending the invitation to be his sons and daughters to all people. But not all people take him up on it. And it is the the act, the choice to be entered into the life of the church through baptism, that is what taking him up on that offer looks like. So people that have not taken him up on that offer are still loved by God. They're theologically called beloved creatures, where God cares greatly about them, but they have not yet accepted the fullness of that relationship that he is holding out to them. And that's part of the urgency of evangelization, right? To be able to bring people into this family. So when we come into the family, this should transform who we are and our relationship with God. And we see our own lives mirroring what happens in Scripture, right? So we've got Old Testament, we've got, or Adam and Eve, I should say, we'll start with. There's that true son and daughter relationship with God, and then there's that rupture of sin, right? So once they have sinned against God, they're out of right relationship with him, and we see the fruits of that all throughout the Old Testament. We have the prophets needing to kind of translate God's message to them. They're not able to hear from him for themselves. And it is, of course, the coming of Christ that sets the relationship right again. We've got to re-break the bone in the person of Christ and reset it so that it's possible for the church to actually come into right relationship with God. And so if you look at the story of Jesus' baptism, you have the heavens opening, the Holy Spirit coming down, and the voice of God being heard. These three things that happen and show us what is going to happen at baptism. And these are the same things that happened at your baptism. And I wasn't there, so maybe they were audible at your baptism. They weren't at mine, but it's a reality that you experience where you're able to receive and have relationship with God. That's the open heaven part of things. We'll hear his voice. When we pray, we can hear from God for ourselves, and we receive the Holy Spirit in a real way. And that's what brings you into the family. This operates a lot like adoption does within our society. We are adopted fully into the family of God through our baptism. My husband and I both happen to have adopted siblings, and really randomly, it is the middle child in both of our families that is adopted, which is really unusual because both of our families were able to have one biological child, then we're not able to have more, and then God sent a baby when both my mother-in-law and my mother were 40 that was just like, surprise, cherry at the end. And so it's the middle child in both of our families that's adopted. And if you were to say, is it different with your biological sibling versus your adopted sibling? It's not. They're a member of the family in the exact same real way as our biological siblings. And being in a family comes along with a lot, right? There's a lot of good. There's a lot of struggle in our human families, but the family of God it's kind of all the good and none of the baggage of family, right? You're able to share in the authority of God. It's like when you let your 16-year-old share the family car. But if we get out of right relationship with mom and dad, that car sharing is probably not going to continue, right? And this is the same thing, the encouragement to stay in a state of grace, to continue to be in right relationship with God, to not kind of have that be grounded in your relationship with your parents, and be able to maintain that authority that they share with you. And part of the family nature is then the gifts that we have to give, the chores we have to do. And that's where it sits in kind of the importance level. So are you going to disown your children if they don't do their chores? No. Are you going to love your children more if they do their chores? Maybe temporarily. Not really, not actually. Sometimes it's easier to love my one female daughter on chore day than it is all of my sons who struggle much more with their chores. But it doesn't actually change anything about the relationship that we have. And so that's not the stakes. The stakes are not God's going to love me or not love me based on whether I do this. But the stakes are, this is your responsibility to our family. If you're not able to do this, we need to have a logistical conversation. Why? Are you in too many activities? Do you have too much homework? What is it that's keeping you from doing this thing that is your responsibility to everybody else? No, we're not going to kick you out if you don't do it, but also we need to make way for you to do it. that is where charisms sit, kind of within the whole family life of the church. Because there are other people needing you, though they don't know it, they can't articulate it to you, there are people waiting on you and needing you to give the gifts that you've been given because they're waiting to receive it. This is something that I'm expanding kind of for the first time in this work with charisms, is being able to better articulate and understand what charisms we are actually needing to receive. Like, what is it that we need to receive from other people so that we can be open to that? If you're someone who you realize, I really need to receive encouragement, if you're shutting people down as soon as they try to encourage you, you're not opening yourself to actually receiving what it is that you need. And though people would never know it and they'll never be able to articulate it, I firmly believe, this is something you can believe or not, it's up to you, but I believe that at your personal judgment, you're gonna be responsible and you're gonna see the opportunities where you were meant to give what you have been given and you missed it, and you're gonna be responsible for that. Now there's gonna be varying degrees of culpability because if you didn't know, that's different. But now you have the weight of knowing. Now you know. So there's a new level of really being beholden to what it is that you're meant to give to other people when you recognize what it is that you have to give. And so that's what it says on this slide. We're not trying to prove anything. We're not trying to earn anything. We already have access to God. The stakes are not that we're going to get kicked out of the family. The stakes are, this is what other people need from you to continue to function as a family. Because when you go all the way back to Eve's sin, like what is her actual sin? I'm confident someone in this room does know.
Taking the fruit of the tree.
Yes, yeah, so she takes the fruit of the tree, and what does the snake say to her to get her to do that?
You gotta really say that.
You'll see what God can see.
Yeah, so she'll be like God.
She'll be like God.
Exactly, yes. So when she takes the apple, she is saying, oh, I want to try and reach for being like God. How was she made initially?
From the side of Adam.
From the side of Adam, but in the image and likeness of God. She was already like God in the correctly ordered way for a human being to be like God. And so what she was doing was trying to get by performance what she'd already been given as a gift. She's trying to earn something that was freely given to her. And so we can contrast this with the Blessed Mother, right, at the Annunciation, where she is given this opportunity, she's given this gift, and instead of grasping for something, she says yes. She says she will do what it is that she is being asked to do. And this is an acceptance of the gift, not a reaching for something. So that's the model that we want to look at, is how do I just stay open and receptive to what I've received and not think about like, oh, but I haven't done enough to earn that yet. I'm going to try and put some coins in the barrel to be able to earn this, and then I will feel worthy of doing this thing, being a part of the plan of salvation in some way. So we don't want to take Eve up on her example. We want to take the Blessed Mother up on her example. And so that's why charisms are about serving, not earning. This is where we want to be able to give